Hey folks, and welcome back to the channel. Today is June 3rd, 2025. It's a Tuesday morning, and I think I need to do an unscheduled harvest of my Yukon Gold potatoes today because I think I've got a late blight issue. And I've got some black leaves, they're curling, it's on most of the plants. Most of the plants, though, like the majority of the actual plant looks very healthy, but there are spots on each plant that look less healthy. One plant looked kind of bad the other day. I took it out of the ground. I got 418 grams of potatoes off of them. They look good, they weren't big. So I know they're really not done yet to the size I was hoping to get, because what I wanted to do was have, I wanted to get about a 10-to-1 conversion on the top end, 8-to-1 on the bottom, meaning I plant 1 pound, I got 8 to 10 pounds. I've got 54 plants, I think, in the 2 beds for the 14 pounds. So if I get a pound per plant, that's clearly going to be less than where much less than what I wanted to be. I was hoping to get at about 120 to 140 pounds. I mean, that's a pound and a half, 2 pounds per plant. No, yeah, north of that even. So yeah, it's not looking like I'm probably gonna get the yield I wanted out of these. And I could hold on, I guess, and let the plants keep going, but kind of hesitant to do that. Let me show you what I'm looking at. So what you're going to see in here is the total potato patch. Starting on this end, we've got the red Pontiacs on those 2 beds, the Yukon Golds, and then the Kennebecs. The Kennebecs and the red Pontiac don't seem to be suffering this problem the way the Yukon Golds have been. I think one of the red Pontiacs in the back there has a little bit of it, but it's not pervasive. But if you look at the Yukon Golds, I've got leaf curling, I've got brown/black spots, I've got the white fungus underneath. This is definitely a blight issue. And the problem with that is it can get into the tubers, apparently. Now, let's get relatively close, because I actually dug around the base of this plant a little bit. Forgive the shadow. And you can see we've got pretty good sized potatoes. I just don't know across every plant if I'm going to get a really good yield. But I don't think I can really gamble at this point. It's been maybe about 80 days. I think they went in the ground, what day? March 12th? So yeah, we're probably looking about the 80-day mark. Not quite as long as I wanted. I wanted to push to 90 if I could, but I don't think I'm going to make it. So yeah, let's get harvesting. First thing we're going to do is we're going to cut all the foliage back and get it out of the garden to make it easier to pull the actual tubers out of the ground. So let's get that done. Just from general observation, something I did note was, as well as I tried to do in being out here, paying attention, I got the potato beetles off as much as I could, and I did try to cover up potatoes when I saw them popping out of the ground. As I went through and just, took all that foliage out, I did notice a handful of potatoes that were sticking out of the ground a bit, and they probably did get a little bit of green. I'm not personally worried about that, because when I cook these things up, they'll be so mixed in, the number of bites I'll have of a green skin potato are going to be fairly low with respect to the entire dish that I'm making. But let me show you what I mean. So for example, I come through and I note as I'm cutting these stalks off, that this guy was sitting out a bit. I can see there's a bit of a difference in the color on the outside because it wasn't covered. I did try to come through. I got potatoes way out here in the aisle too. And when I came through, I would try, as I was picking beetles off, to kind of cover up anything that I saw hitting the surface out. But you can see there, I've got a couple. I just noticed it around a bit. I think I'm going to have an interesting harvest. I saw a number of plants that had really thick stems, and I saw some that were a bit more spindly. It'll just be interesting to see what comes out of the ground. And if I can get on the north side of 100 pounds for the 14, I wouldn't be too upset about that. Like I said, I was really hoping to get to that 140 for the 14 planted for that 10x conversion. But let me take you to the front of the bed and I'll just show you how I'm going to be harvesting all of the potatoes through this process, but we'll use one as a demo. This is the first plant on the right-hand side of the right-hand bed. I'll just work my way down on this one and come back the other. I'll probably throw them in a 5-gallon bucket and just take them into the barn in the shade and just put them on a blanket to dry them out over the next week before I bring them inside after dusting them off. Kind of curing them in that way. And it's really just to get, because we've been really damp here, a lot of rain recently, and they're going to come out of the ground with quite a bit of soil dampened on them. And instead of really aggressively brushing them off out here and risking the skin, I'll let them dry off in the barn so that I can knock that soil off without disturbing the skin, versus what would happen if I tried to get it off out here. But enough of that. Let's go ahead and see what we've got. You can already see I've got a potato hitting out of the ground right here. Not a huge potato, not a small potato. Pretty good size, little handful. But the stem on this guy was really quite impressive. Now I harvest my potatoes by hand. I don't use a fork. Another good sized one there. Yeah, this guy, for example, he's got some action going on here. I don't ever want to risk, I don't use a hoe, I don't use a fork, I don't use machinery. I just use my hands to gently brush the soil out. Wow. How's that for a Yukon Gold? I can already tell you from a yield standpoint, this little plant, I say little plant, good sized stem on this one, was pretty impressive versus the one that I took out the other day, which was only a few days ago. And this, and I can see why now. This was the seed potato, still not rotted, got a hole in it, but it's a pretty good sized chunk. Typically a seed potato, if I remember correctly, when I put these in the ground, there weren't a lot of visible chits, but I could see the points in which they would be coming out. But it made it hard for me to visually identify where I wanted to make my cuts to ensure that every piece had a chit. So I made fewer cuts than I would have. Historically, this would have been a piece where I would have actually done another cut right down the middle and had two smaller pieces that would have spread the seed potato, across more space. But in the end, I converted this to all of that. So I think that's a pretty good conversion. I'm not sure what that's going to weigh. Visually, I'm thinking about 2 pounds. Again, I'll do all the weighing in about a week, and at that point, I'll know exactly how I did. But now that's pretty much how I go ahead and I harvest. Now I'm going to dig through this a little bit more just to make sure I didn't miss anybody. And inevitably, I'm sure I have, and it'll pop back up at some point. But I'm pretty comfortable that I got everything out of this one. So I will go ahead and knock all of these out, and when I get them laid out in the barn, I will show you the final. And then we'll pause the video, and I will conclude it next week after I get them cleaned up and weighed. So here is the final harvest. All in all, I would say this was disappointing. I brought in the first bucket, which was the first half of the first bed. I threw it on a scale. It was a little over 20 pounds, maybe around 22. And then the next 2 buckets were about the same, the third bucket being a little shy. So I'm estimating it was about, I don't know, 80 pounds, maybe 75. Got some small potatoes there. And then here is an issue which makes me glad that I pulled them when I did, is I think the blight made it to some of the tubers. So all in all, like I said, I wasn't thrilled with the harvest in the total weight because the conversion wasn't even near what I wanted. I would have taken the weighing a lot more seriously had it looked like I was going to have a chance at the 140. But I think ultimately my biggest failing was related to the size of the seed potato. I think I should have quartered them a little tighter to spread them out more across the bed, but we've got more coming out with the Reds and with the Kennebecs, and the smaller ones that you see here, I'm going to end up putting them into the ground again around mid-July so that I can harvest in late October for seed potato for the following year. I've never done that before, but I'm hoping that works. So in the meantime, appreciate you watching, and we will see you in the red potato video, which hopefully does a lot better. So thanks for watching. Take care.